Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of the Let's Talk podcast with me, Musiamra Namaketa Kheleke. Today, Taron and Kiwu are not with us, but we have a very special guest. This man needs no introduction to the community of the University of the Free State because, yeah, if I'd start speaking of you, I'm sure I could write a Bible. Yeah.
Not that deep.
How do you describe yourself?
Define myself. I'm an authentic, energetic, open person.
So, yeah, Agobakwe, take us back before we even indulge in anything. Take us back to Agobakwe Mboweni, before student activism, before the university, before high school. Where were you born? What was it like growing up there?
Born and bred in Pretoria. Grew up in the dusty streets of Soshanguve, the township in Pretoria. Yeah, that's a summary of where I was, raised and where I was made.
So for the sake of the podcast, you had a tough upbringing. It was social.
Not a tough upbringing. I mean, it's just one of those, trials and tribulations where it has its good side and its bad side of growing up in a township. You wouldn't want to glorify tough upbringing. But yeah, it had its challenges and it had its positive outcome.
So what did you do? Because to me, you look like a person who never played soccer, rugby. You look like you were those guys who are doing debate, top 10 vibes.
Quite the contrary. I played a lot of sport. I played soccer. I did athletics. And then I also played chess, which is still, I think, not defined as a sport. There's still the debate around whether it's a sport or it's a cultural activity. Yeah, read a lot of books. Played PlayStation here and there with my friends. Yeah, that's pretty much of my extramural activities when I was growing up.
So until when did you do athletics?
I think until grade 9, and then when you get to grade 9, it's that age where your parents are like, "Hey, chief, you have to focus now. This is the year where you're going to choose your subjects for grade 10 until matric, and ultimately those subjects will determine your academic year in university and ultimately your career." So yeah, until then it's when I stopped.
So do you think they stopped you because of that? Or do you think they stopped you because you saw my pain?
Nah, I think my mother's a teacher, so she's a very much steadfast person who's a staunch lover of education. So she wants you to give 110% for education. So I think it was a matter of that. I mean, maybe if I had invested more, maybe I would have been an athlete, but only God knows.
So because I think this is the most important thing for people who are going to be watching. Where does the love for activism come in? When did you discover that this is what I want to do?
Hey, it's a very interesting story. So my grandfather was an activist during the apartheid times. He was a pastor. As you know, pastors had the influence and impact on the struggle in South Africa. So that cascaded to my mother, who was also an activist, who's also a teacher and ultimately a member of SATU, which is part of SATU as a trade union. So growing up, she'll tell me stories, she'll read books to me, and yeah, I'd get a little bit of vigor here and there. So yeah, that's where the nucleus of where the passion comes from. And then once from there, I just started also reading a lot. I think I used to love reading books and encyclopedias, and there was a passion about activism. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you when you talk about books, there people always is a note or a note. Eh? When they align you, they say you are like the young Tabombek because I think most of them is because they know that you're always posting about his work and stuff. What do you make of that?
No, I wouldn't. I don't love being called a young somebody because that places pressure on you, and that almost makes it seem like a personality cult. But I am somebody who appreciates the contribution which the former president has made to both the ANC and the country at large. I think he's somebody that some of us have learned a fair deal from. But I wouldn't love to be called a young somebody. I think I'm myself, and I'd like to grow as myself.
So if Thabo Mbeki was president now, based on the way you maybe follow him and look at his work when he was president, what do you think he would do, especially with regards to the pandemic, lockdowns, stuff like that?
That's a hypothetical question, but I think the first thing that he would have done most probably is to understand that um, the situation which we're facing right now needs a strong economic recovery plan. Many businesses, whether small or medium, were affected in a variety of ways, from the pandemic to the riots that happened about 3 weeks ago. So I think the first thing he would do is that he would make sure that there's a clear, detailed plan in order to recover the economy. Because with the lack of a strong economy, everything else just falls apart. You don't have adequate healthcare, you don't have adequate agriculture, you don't have adequate arts and culture as well. You don't have adequate sports and facilities. So I think you would prioritize the economy, but as we've all been saying as well, you can't prioritize the economy without prioritizing life, especially in a pandemic. So yeah, that's where things would be.
You know what I think? I think lockdown. When we look at it, when it started, it was new to us. I don't know if it was new to you.
It was new to me as well.
All right. So when it started, it made sense, because we didn't know what was in the pipeline,
Mm.
right? So first lockdown hits, everybody's like, okay, we're gonna stay at home, sanitize, wash our hands, blah 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 blah. Then time goes on. Maybe let's say recently, we go to a level 4, for example, but we still see the same pattern being followed. It's lockdown, then we come back from level 4 to level 3, but nothing is being done that is sort of progressive. For example, if you go to a Kasi, maybe in Kwatwa, you'd find people walking around with no masks, right? And then most of them still believe that there's no COVID because they don't see the way we see it. For example, we are seeing it at a point of privilege, I may say, because we are living in a place where it's diverse. We're close to hospitals. We meet people who go to Joburg, blah 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 blah. So when the lockdown regulations started, it made sense for most of the people in the country. Maybe I can say, I'm not sure if I'm the only one with this view. So now we are like, but you're giving us 350. And a couple of weeks ago, you said there's no money, blah, 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 blah. We are thinking, why isn't this 350s, this 350 getting invested in hospitals to get more equipment or stuff like that? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I'm getting your point. I think there's a general confusion. One, two, there's a general pandemic fatigue. 3, there's also misinformation. So I think with confusion is that probably people are not able to access certain information with regards to why there's a certain amount being invested here, why there's a certain amount being invested there, why there's a certain amount invested there. For example, the 350s, you find some people saying, why didn't you build a hospital? But then you find that there were like places which were made temporary places depending on the amount of people that had the pandemic. So there's also a general, I think, pandemic fatigue, you know. It made sense the first time when it arrived because we were scared, we were terrified. But when you now start seeing much more information being spoken about, much more information being given to you, for some people, they just say, the virus is not as bad as we thought about. You know, for example, going to shops, now you don't have to stand in a line outside when you're going to a certain shop. So I think people right now are just tired. People right now are not as scared as they were of the virus. And then there's misinformation about things such as the vaccine being a...
Hey, this is Hope. Hey, sorry about that. Hey, Hope, this is Agobakwe here. What do you want to say? We are live on the podcast. We are live on the podcast. We are at Centenary Complex shooting a podcast. This is Agobakwe. Do you have a question for Agobakwe? All right. I'll call you after shooting. I'm working here.
Yeah. So as I was saying, there's misinformation as well about, you know, vaccines, about how COVID is passed on from one person to another. So I just think it's a combination of alternating issues that have made people to become either wary or reluctant or nonchalant about the whole situation.
You see? That's why I keep telling people having politicians and celebrities on interviews is a problem. 'Cause now we're having cameramen there, not having enough storage, we don't know what's going on. Everything is going south. But yeah, let's move away from that a little bit. I want us to look at young people. Because not every young person, because we always complain about capital, saying, I don't have capital to start a business, I don't have this and this and this and that. Do you think the pandemic has opened a way for us to sort of try and break those barriers and saying, okay, I don't have capital, let me take 50 Rand maybe, buy PPE masks, sell them for 10 Rand each, make more, sell masks, and then fund whatever business I'm trying to maneuver in. So do you think for young people, the pandemic caused an advantage or a disadvantage in terms of how maybe structurally, how we can think for the future and also trying to, business-wise, try to make a living?
Oh, that's a very complicated one because in every situation that is very chaotic in which the pandemic has produced and reproduced itself, there are opportunities and there are threats. So I think generally it depends on your sense of innovation at the given time and space. As you mentioned, there are some young people and even some elderly people who've taken the opportunity about these 350s to either open up various business ventures, as you say, the purchasement of mosques, where they act as an intermediary between wholesalers and the customers. And then you find some people have opened up food outlets. But generally, I think it has presented young people with an essence about having a view that at times you might find that you need to always reskill yourself. What you thought had job security yesterday might change tomorrow by just one major global shift. So you find young people right now, some are even taking those 350s and saving them up or investing them in online courses just to get an essence of a different sense of education, you know? So I think it has presented us with an essence to think beyond the venture of being employed, but also that there are heavy risks when you are a entrepreneur. So I think young people in the essence have gained much more of a step in the right direction from the pandemic. But in the long term, in the short term, we could argue that some are retrenched, especially with how businesses operate with first in, first out. I mean, last in, first out. So I think in the long term, it will have a positive impact, but in the short term, right now, it's not the most positive thing.
Yeah. So let's bring it home now. Yes, because most of our viewers are off-season students, right?
Yeah.
And and we did talk before we shot before we're shooting that we're gonna dive a bit into the current state of student activism on campus. Because over the years, what I've noticed is every year there's always a complaint that we're not getting more students to support us. If we are making a strike, the red ends will only be the ones there, and then the golden ones will go that corner, that side. Where are the students? So I want to know from you before we dive into the current state of student activism, what has been the most challenging in terms of recruiting students to be a part of maybe a movement, for example, if you're fighting for fees must fall, for example? What has been the most challenging thing in terms of recruiting students in the University of the Free State to try and support, maybe, even if it's not a political view, but to sort of support an ideology that you want to prosper?
I think being in the SRC is one of the most difficult things to do because the system, the university system at large, is very reluctant to change. It's very rigid. It's very not in touch with the ground. So you find people who are professors who have the most prolific educational qualification, but who are in the business of managing the resources of the university to make a profit. Then you find the students who have their needs and wants and who view you when you are in the SRC as an instrument of change. But when you are in deliberations about enforcing and advocating for those changes with the university management will make it seem and push you down to divide the students and make it seem like you are the spokesperson of the university, meaning that you are agreeing to the terms and conditions that the university is reluctant to change. So the university, for example, let's say they want to increase fees by more than the inflation rate of 3 to 5%. Let's say the university wants to increase it by 10%. And you go as the SRC and say, no, we don't want an increment. We're very adamant that, in our view, even the fees must drop. The university then and yourselves get into a deadlock. The university and yourselves probably try to reach a compromise that probably should be within the inflation rate. Because at times you are compromised that you have to negotiate because council, which is the highest decision-making body of the university, takes the ultimate decision. And with there's only 1 or 2 representatives from the student. So once that decision has been taken, the university will make it seem like the SRC did not start off fighting. They'll just say the university management and the student representative council have agreed on a, let's say, 5% increment. They will not say that the SRC was proposing a 0% and they were proposing a 10%. So that's where the biggest issue is of a divide and conquer by the university management. They make the SRC to be the bad guy within the student population. The other thing is that the university space, as some of us would say, is a microcosm of society. So you find a variety of different classes, different races, different genders, different tribes. So the mobilization around a particular cause within the discourse is very hard to mobilize for, because you'd find that some students, it does not affect their privilege, or they are not underprivileged from that situation. So gaining consciousness from the situation and trying to conscientize some students to join the cause is always a problem. Some students who are getting affected by particular situations also have a fear of, how the university will terrorize them by using private security, by getting the police involved. So it's all a matter of different tactics that are being used by the university to divide the students in terms of mobilization. So that's where the biggest challenge in terms of mobilizing for
We're learning big English today. Maninga Wash. We're learning English today. Conscientize. I think that's going to be the title of the video. How can the university conscientize? So let's jump to the issue of transformation. Yeah. I was very, you call it skeptical when you are taking with your thoughts there and saying, ish, what am I going to say? Some of us, these things, we just know them from a brushed point of view. Transformation, that's transformation. It's small, we make it big, transform, done. What does transformation mean to Agobakwe Mboweni, especially in the university space?
In my perception, it means a positive change. I say that because the university has a slogan that it is the university that is healing South Africa. And when you heal something, you're making sure that it has a positive outcome from the situation, because it was having a negative outcome. So in essence, it's recognizing the diversity of the various stakeholders, which are the students, the lecturers, the different staff members, the different rectorate members, the different council members, and recognizing that the space in which we're in has to embrace a situation whereby nobody feels belittled, oppressed, and suppressed by the other. So, I believe that transformation in this university space should reflect that, beyond just the report.
Do you think we are moving in a right direction as a university? Because I think we have, especially this year, we're seeing a lot of projects. People are saying, there's a term that they like using. Processes must unfold. Uh, we see a lot of processes unfolding. Do you think we are moving in the right direction in towards the transformation that we want to see in the university? Because I think we can't act like we don't see that there's people at least trying to transform, at least leave something for the upcoming or the future generation of the SRC in this university, or the leaders and the activists that are coming in. We can't overlook and say, man, do you think we are heading somewhere, especially as students, in order for us to try and say, this is what we want, let's move together?
I think before I get to that, I just want to say I'm not the university spokesperson right now. So I'm going to be very blunt. Progress is being made, but in my perception, it's happening a bit too slow. So I think there are too many red tapes. There are too many nitty-gritties that happen.
Red tapes.
Yeah, red tapes. It's called the red tapes when the system is very rigid and it doesn't want to change. So I think that's the situation at hand. Progress is being made, but I just feel like, it's very, and the university system is very unresponsive. The university system is very reluctant to change. So as you say, there are projects, and we're hoping that those projects will unfold themselves to, bigger things. That it must not just be a project which happens, for example, one residence and it stays like that. For example, historical res culture, which was oppressive, it happened whereby one student from one certain residence said, no, this thing is taking away my dignity. And then that consciousness spread out like a wildfire, and race culture, not just for that race, changed, but for other residences also changed to make it inclusive. So I'm just hoping that whatever spaces are being transformed, let it not be in an isolated manner. Let it be something that will spread like that.
Because I think, especially on your, because I think there's a, looking into our university, there's eras. We have the SK era, and then we have the ACV era, and then we have the SOSO era, and then we have the blessed era, the blessed era. You see, so you guys, you sort of, I think the world, when it came to you guys, because remember with you, not only were you SRC, but you were one of the few, if not the only one, who had received more than enough votes from students. I think you were a trustee. Is it like that? Students had faith in you. You were one of the people that each and every student know that this person for us is the person that we can send anywhere and would deliver for us. When the pandemic hit, you guys had to re-strategize and open for those ones that are going to come in as a break, like the current SRC that we are having. Because no matter how people can try and shift, you guys had it tough. Because it hit and nobody knew what was going to happen, if we're going to go back to normal or not. But when this one's, the current SRC started coming in, they sort of knew that we might not go back to normal. But at the current moment, what we have is online, right? So do you think the pandemic's effect had a positive or negative impact towards processes unfolding?
I think more often than not, it had much more of a negative impact. You couldn't have your day-to-day activities as an SRC collective and as an SRC individual. We had gone to strategic planning in September, just after being elected into office, and then we had another one in January. So from September until January, we had a strategy. And then from January, unfortunately, until March, we had a strategy. And ever since from then, it was always a matter of now issues are rising and you don't have a reference point to look at. So I think it had a negative impact because a lot of things that we had planned did not happen. We had things such as wanted to have initiatives with the rector, wanted to have initiatives with DVC of academics about, academic exclusion. Wanted to have a dialogue with NSFAS, whereby NSFAS comes to campus. Wanted to have KBB, even recreational activities that we would normally have, unfortunately, could not happen. And as much as you want to do things, and as much as we did things, but it was just not the same. You can't have the KBB online. It's just not the same experience. You can't have a rector accountability or a state of the campus online, because now if somebody's disgruntled, they can just log off and you can't necessarily go and say, but people want you to account. So it made us adapt to the situation, but it had a very, very negative impact on our term, because now we had to also now fight for students to get laptops, fight for students to have data, and then the university is now saying no, the university doesn't have money. We're introducing Global Protect, but you're saying students are saying that this Global Protect app does not work. The university is saying, but the university does not have money. So what do we do? So it placed us in very uncharted waters, and it was a learning experience, to say the
Hey, Chief, what's happening? Are we fine? Do we still have time? Let's say. All right. So, yeah. Before we before you shot, you spoke about. Before we shot, you spoke about the podcast that I always watch and post on my status. Ne?
Yeah.
There's a game that they play there. I want us to play it. So the game is one must go. Ne? So I'm gonna give you two people. And I think I'm gonna put them here on the screen somewhere. You just say one must go. So you choose which one you stay with. And then it's sort of playing chairs, which one will be your pawn, your knight, or
Right.
so yeah, are you ready?
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Michael Muguni and Poma Oban.
Michael can go.
Hey, Michael, Chief, you don't have the sauce. We have Katla Olochua. But this one is an easy one. Tumelo Lokhodi and the career guy, Malo.
Malo can go.
All right. Yeah, let me get a bit controversial. Jerry or Vosums?
Vos can go. Jerry at least has some Korea sauce now. And he's a president, so weirdly.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Hey, this one. It's not the normal one. I said Katlaolochuo or Asivi.
Agatha can go.
It can go.
Mm.
Atla, you heard your colleague. Not trustworthy. So. Last one. Give me names. Josh. Give me names there. Give me Popeye names here. Yeah, so but I need a stronger one. Pura, the former dean, and Miss P. One must go.
Miss P can go. About the Pura, I don't know. I've never had a name.
I have names. I want a stronger one. One that's gonna make you scratch your head. So Khofatso Choban. Or Patos.
Patos can go.
Yeah, that was a better one. All right. I think we're gonna have to wrap up now.
You see, we said Prophet Abula.
Who must go?
He doesn't get go. Lingabula can come back and be VC.
Oh, ish. Hey, you're a very complicated person. This thing was easy for you. I'll start looking for another podcast so I can ask you more questions. Let's get more before. How many minutes do you have there, Kujo? 5. All right. So where do we see Agobakwe in 5 years?
In 5 years, probably in a foundation somewhere. Probably as a qualitative analyst or an economist. I'm still contemplating as to what I want to do there. Yeah, and generally in community outreach programs. Yeah, those are my goals.
Thank you, man, for doing this interview with us. You know we love you. You know the students of the University of the Free State. I don't know about the current ones, but you know the generation that came with us. We admire you and wish you all the best towards your future endeavors. And that's it from me. Kheleke Mufasa. Follow us on Let's Talk EFS Student Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, like on YouTube, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, blah blah blah, so you get notified when you drop another video. Kheleke, object. Yo. Ahoy, Baba Yam.
It's for the family, don't. I got sisters to carry into this game. I am married, there's so much pain in this verses. There's no much pain in no canvas. It's hard to predict, I'm like the loader box. Trapped in a cage, Ray is Nicholas. Save me now, why you wanna kick me when you know I'm down? I won't cry, my tears will never fall down. I bring it best of me, yeah. I bring it best of me, yeah. I'm bringing my best, it's just a level up. I'm bringing my best, it's don't cry. I'm bringing my best, it's just a level up. I'm bringing my best, it's don't cry. My tears will never fall down. 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 Mama, don't cry, I'ma build you a house with a single track. Never off track, train back. I drink to rag every chance, know I did my best, but it's better than the